It was a rusty first half, but the second half looked a little bit more like the Bucks we enjoy watching. They beat the Nets 110-99, and they remain undefeated on the season. And there's only one thing we like better than a stock standard Bucks win. It's a stock standard Bucks win when Giannis goes absolutely ballistic. So we're going to talk about Giannis. We're going to talk about crazy coaches trying to get to the official with four men holding them back. It was an entertaining game at Fiserv Forum. Let's get into it.
You are Locked On Bucks, your daily Milwaukee Bucks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On Bucks. My name's Kane Pittman. You can see and hear me on this show Monday to Friday, and also found my work over at ESPN alongside me, the founder of brewhoop.com and longtime voice of the podcast, Frank Madden, for this post-game show. And we thank you for making it your first watch or first listen of every day. I've been on the subscription drive for YouTube, but I'm going to keep it rolling. Hit subscribe if you haven't. I just put a little clip up on Twitter and someone said, you know what? Your Australian accent sounds even thicker when I can see your face, which tells me that that person that tweeted that isn't subscribed to YouTube. So get on YouTube, hit subscribe, and support us here because we have a bit of fun. Frank's still in the old house. Excellent lighting, though, tonight. Beautiful lighting right now that he's got that you will be able to see on YouTube soon. He's moving to a new house. Continue to send the congratulations through. But the Bucks are 3-0, Frank. And I said it right at the top. We love it when the Bucks win, but we love it even more when they win and Giannis goes nuts. At halftime, I was sitting back and thinking, this is a pretty painful experience watching this game. The Bucks were 34% from the field. They were 17%, or even worse than that, I think, from three. It was awful. And then it felt like Giannis said, you know what? Enough of this. I've had enough. I'm just going to destroy every member of the Brooklyn Nets on defense, score 30-plus points in the second half, and we're going to win this game. And that's the most enjoyable version of Bucks basketball.
Yeah, I mean, we saw kind of the first half before, right? The last preseason game similarly felt very slog-like especially for the Bucks. The Nets won that game, and Giannis, we remember, played into the fourth quarter pretty late for a preseason game, in part because I think he was just frustrated and trying to get his bearings. And tonight, the first half kind of felt like a redux of that. Felt like Giannis was settling for jump shots. Felt like he wasn't really attacking and making the defense feel him like he is when he's at his best. And I went back and looked at the play-by-play because I remember he was 5 out of 14 at one point, and I was like counting as he continued to make shot after shot after shot. I knew he's finished 16 of 25, so that tells you he made his last 11 shots. And I went back to the play-by-play. It looks like he made his last 12 shots in this game. So basically over the last, I think, 21 minutes of gameplay, he was 12 out of 12 from the field. And, if we were concerned that 17 to 21 the other night, right, it's like, he can't do that every night. And yes, in the first half, he did not, right? Did not look very sharp. Bucks just felt like they were in mud. Kind of felt like everybody
had 4 days off.
Yeah, it felt like it, right? It felt like they were kind of like rusty. It felt like they were sort of waiting for somebody else to make a play. And it was like, guys, there's no Chris Middleton. It's Jrue and Giannis. Felt like Jrue was having to force shots. Another poor shooting night for him. He's obviously the first game he was really poor. Tonight, I think 5 out of 18 shooting, and just some of the turnovers too. Like, I thought this was a really bad Jrue Holiday game. I didn't think he was even that good. I didn't think he was good defensively either. I mean, Kyrie lost him repeatedly. Felt like he was having a hard time going over screens, and honestly, felt like they got better defensively when George Hill switched on to Kyrie kind of early in the fourth quarter after Kyrie had gone on a bit of a run. And again, it's not like George Hill's like shutting down Kyrie one-on-one or something like that. I think the Nets maybe went away from him a little bit more than they should have, but yeah, it was not a great Jrue Holiday game. And Bobby Portis, let's give a shout out to Bobby. Bobby basically was the lifeline in the first half. He seemed like the only guy that was really making shots and putting pressure on the Nets defensively. He finished 8 out of 14 from the field, 20 points, 11 rebounds, and they needed it. 2 steals, 2 blocks. He gave a little bit on both ends. And they really needed it because that first half, they go down. They were leading, I think, 34-33 at one point. I know they were up 27-20 at one point. It was one of these games, right? Like the Nets couldn't hit any shots, but the Bucks didn't really seem like, it was almost like, oh, okay, the Nets suck tonight, so we'll suck tonight too. And both teams just kind of stuck in the mud for long stretches. And then late in the second quarter, the Nets were like, oh, wait a minute, we're really talented. And we can start scoring some points. And the Bucks didn't really seem to get unstuck aside from Bobby. So kudos to first half Bobby Portis giving some energy, and then second half all Giannis all the time, as you mentioned. I mean, 34 points. We'll have to. I was bemoaning before the podcast. I was trying to go do some research on how many 30-point halves he's had. He's had a number of them, but I don't know that I'd have to double check. I don't know that he's ever scored more than 34 and a half. And that was just an absolute demolition of a Nets team that, as we've seen, I mean, the Nets under Steve Nash have had some weirdly good stretches defensively against the Bucks, even though they have generally not been a good defensive team. They were the only team that really gave the Bucks any defensive problems in the 21 championship run. And for the first half, Bucks scored 25 in the first quarter, 18 in the second quarter, 43 points in the half. They're down 10 and a half. It's like, and yeah, I think Giannis, what was he, minus 16 or something in the first half. So it wasn't like they were just getting killed with Giannis off the floor. But fortunately, third and fourth quarters, totally different story. They outscore them 67-44. And yeah, just the Giannis show again, 43 points, 14 rebounds, 5 assists, a steal, 3 blocks. Did have 7 turnovers. I thought the Nets, again, showed bodies and got Giannis to be a little more careless with the ball than you'd want. But again, let's just say it again for the second straight podcast. This was another one of those nights where you just say, I appreciate just being able to watch Giannis Antetokounmpo play basketball night in and night out, because he just does stuff that we don't expect to see. And I think, this was obviously a better test of him than I think against the Rockets. And I had to play 38 minutes tonight, a little more extended action than what we saw on Saturday, where he put up 44 in 27 minutes. Tonight has to play 38 minutes, probably more than Bud would have liked to play him. But I thought, again, he was tremendous, and they got just enough offensively from other guys. And I thought overall defense was, again, a big part of the story. You hold the Nets to 99 points. You'll take that every day. And Brook Lopez, 6 blocks again tonight. His rim protection just continues to be incredible. And again, just doing enough from some of these other guys. And I thought there were just a couple stretches where, I think it was 83-83. And was it Wara that hit a 3, I think, maybe, to give the Bucks an 86-83 lead. And I think both teams then didn't score for 3 minutes. And it felt like it felt like whoever was going to get the next basket was going to be in the driver's seat, it was just felt like the game was kind of there for somebody to take. And the Nets just came up empty trip after empty trip. Brook had a couple of great defensive plays, including that one awesome block where he got Kyrie and then caught it, and Kyrie fouled him. And then I think it was Giannis then scored. I think Giannis scored 4 straight to make it 90-83. And from there on out, Giannis got a rest, but really the Nets weren't able to take advantage. And, say what you will about the Nets, they're 1-3 now, but they're a very talented team. They were missing, some guys as well, but for the most part, give the Bucks credit. They didn't have their A game tonight offensively, but they were able to grind through it in large part thanks to the best player on earth. And you moved to 3-0. Just keep banking those wins, baby.
Yeah, we can talk more about the way Giannis scored. I also want to talk about the officiating a little bit. Brooklyn Nets trying to break an all-time record for technical fouls in one game. And then we can talk about the rotation a little bit. You kind of hinted to it. The guy that I've been, the George Hill defender here on Locked On Bucks. Good night if you're a George Hill defender for sure. So we can get into that a little bit more as well. But I want to talk about Prize Picks because I don't know. I actually don't know what the points projection was for Giannis tonight at Prize Picks, but I think he probably came in over it, and he probably did against Houston a couple of nights ago as well. So if you aren't aware what Prize Picks is, it works this way. You pick 2 to 5 players, and if they do score more or less than their Prize Picks projection, you can win up to 10 times your money on any entry. There's no competing against other people. It's just you versus the projections that are available at prizepicks.com. There's NBA, but there's also NFL, MLB, NHL, PGA golf, and pretty much any sport you can think of. You can make your entry in 60 seconds or less. It's that easy. It's safe and fast to use, and currently operational in over 30 states, and also the home of Steve Nash, Canada. So download the PrizePicks app or go to prizepicks.com and sign up to play daily fantasy sports. First-time users can receive 100% instant deposit match up to $100. And if you that's pretty simple, but I'll walk you through it. If you deposit $100, they'll give you $100. If you deposit 50, they'll give you 50. Don't forget to use the promo code Locked On at sign up for that instant deposit instant deposit match up to $100. I'm so excited. PrizePicks.com. Also, check out the Locked On Sports Today podcast. Once you're done with Locked On Bucks, of course, for the games that matter to the biggest stories in sports, go beyond the scoreboard and behind the scenes with local experts and insights only Locked On can provide. Locked On Sports Today, available on this app, YouTube, and wherever you get your podcasts. Having a bit of trouble speaking at the moment, Frank, but Steve Nash was having no trouble speaking. You're just throwing stuff around. You're acting like a everyday Steve Nash at the moment in your household. But anyway, Nash went berserk. And do you know what I love about Steve Nash going crazy in this instance? First of all, it was a flop from my great mate, Patty Mills. So that's fine. So to get yourself kicked out over a flop is funny. Secondly, I love coach ejections. So I love it when people need to get fake held back. There's nothing better in sports. But the thing that I love about Steve Nash, first of all, he's Canadian. So it's like everyone assumes that he's nice. No one's threatened by Steve Nash while he's doing this. But he did it twice. He went crazy on the no call. Then he was like, me? What did I do? I didn't do anything. And then the official obviously was like having none of it, gave him the tech. So he just completely snapped again. And then after he had 4 people holding him back, he was like, what did I do? I didn't do anything here. His eyes were nearly popping out of his skull. This was a great performance from Steve Nash. And there's a lot of theories out there that he was trying to spark the team. I believe they were leading when he got ejected, and things didn't go well from there on. But just a great display.
Yeah, I was going to say, I don't, Nash is one of those interesting coaches, right? Because as we said, like the Nets have given the Bucks some problems with their defense, but then, I think a lot of people probably saw the stats against the Nets in the regular season over the last couple of years. Giannis was like averaging 36 points a game and was 5-1 in that span. And obviously they had the playoff series that the Bucks ultimately emerged from. So it is kind of weird because like I still associate the Nets with like, they're kind of frisky against Giannis. Like they kind of give him some trouble. And then you look at the numbers and you're just like, yeah, no, he just torches them. And I think we saw tonight, like even if they have some answers some of the time, this is why Giannis is who he is. He's able to problem solve, and the Bucks kind of change things up a little bit, move guys around, give Giannis maybe the ball, put him into, chances where he can go downhill. And, I think again, it's just so hard to stay with this dude for 48 minutes and the punishment that he's able to dole out. And, it was funny. It felt like there were a number of occasions where Giannis got Kyrie switched onto him. And it's just that thing, like Giannis, I feel like is way more comfortable with a big man on him than one of these little guys. And a few times, like he had Kyrie on him and he kind of like was like, and he actually like basically got Kyrie off of him again. And it just felt like even if
you think he's uncomfortable dribbling,
I don't think he knows what to. I think he's worried about attacking them because they're quick, right? So it's harder to like angle around them, and then little guys are just more likely to flop anyway, right? Like I think that's something that Giannis loves about playing against big guys who are like too proud, and also got like Joel, right? Joel Embiid like defends Giannis pretty well, but I think Giannis and kind of loves going up against like an Embiid or a Gobert because he knows he can kind of lower the shoulder, and those guys like don't really want to flop. Like they're not trying to be out there taking charges against him, so he can play really physically against them, and I think he really enjoys that versus again like a little guy who it's just like backing him down. Again, like unless Giannis is putting you under the rim, it's not like he wants to just shoot like 10-foot hook shots all day long. So as much as Claxton had some decent possessions, we saw like Giannis when he had the ball against Claxton, like he really attacked him a lot of times going to his right and got to the rim just like repeatedly. Cause again, it's just hard for a big dude in space to keep up with Giannis and just his quickness. So, it was just kind of a clinic to watch from Giannis, and I think just underscores what makes him great, right? I mean, doesn't have a good first half. Team is down 10, especially no Chris Middleton. Like, you can't just kind of go into a shell, right? You can't just turtle like Ben Simmons and just say like, oh, I'm just going to dribble up and pass and have somebody else do stuff. Like, Giannis, you got to be the spark. And, we saw it from the outset of the third quarter. Like, he really tried to be that spark. And, there was one bad 3-point shot he attempted at the start of the third quarter. But as we said, then he just sort of started to get rolling, started to get into the foul line, and hits his last 12 shots and, started to mix in, hit a three, catch and shoot three early in the fourth. Hit, I think, a couple of kind of mid-range shots as well. So it felt like he started going inside out in the second half versus in the first half. Felt like he was just maybe settling for that pull-up jump shot, kind of the mid-ranger, a little bit early. And when it wasn't there, obviously, I think it's also just painful watching these broadcasts. Yeah, it's just so predictable. Anytime Giannis misses a jump shot, like, oh, they want him to take that. It's like, well, no shit, they want him to take that, right? But this is part of him evolving as a player, and not just kind of having to use himself as a human battering ram the entire time. But credit to him, right? He found the balance in the second half, and started to really beat them up at the basket, but then also was able to hit a couple jump shots and even drew a foul on that kind of pet post turnaround.
Lucky, because he kept the 12 for 12 streak alive, because I think that might have been Nelly's last shot for the game. I believe it was late in the game anyway, on the turnaround. And we saw a couple of those calls on the landing space stuff. Like the Kevin Durant one at the start of the game, I think I put in our DM. It's tough. Like, I get it.
On Bobby Portis.
Yeah, and Bobby clearly did turn his ankle. Like, I understand it, and it makes sense. It's just really tough. And by the way, imagine if you had size 73 feet. Like, trying to keep your feet out of the way has to be a pretty difficult task as well. But anyway, we'll take the flagrant while it's there. And as you pointed to, they needed those points there in the first half. Jeff Van Gundy said it on the broadcast, so I'm not claiming this to be my own take, but I was certainly thinking it at the time. He spoke about Giannis playing a little bit closer to the basket potentially. But we did see tonight, when we talk about teams, if they're walling off Giannis or they're playing off Giannis and giving him that jump shot, the ability for Giannis to just get so deep and near the restricted area almost, and the Brooklyn Nets defenders, whether it was Ben Simmons or it was O'Neal a couple of times, were almost like, okay, we know we need to backpedal, because if not, he's going to go straight past us. And before they knew it, they were under the basket, and you're just not going to stop Giannis at that point. So I thought it was interesting the way they even we're trying to defend him, and maybe they just don't have the guys. Let's be honest, not many teams do. But Giannis takeover is always fun. I mentioned George Hill at the top of the show. So he ended up playing 29 minutes tonight in this one off the bench. He played more minutes than anyone in a reserve role. Javon Carter only had the 15 minutes tonight. I was curious on yesterday's show with Camille, wondering what the Bucks would do with the lineup. I figured they would try and play Wesley Matthews a little bit more. Wes ended up picking up a bunch of fouls through the night, which isn't all that surprising if your primary task is defending Kevin Durant. But I thought, again, George Hill moved well. He looks like a guy he just looks spry. He just looks like a guy that wasn't able to do things last year. Look, I'll continue to call out the silliness, because we don't have to hate one of our own every single night, Frank. And I saw some tweets about, it's a miracle George Hill is playing good basketball. It's like, yeah, no shit. He doesn't have a broken neck anymore. Like, I've said this before. George Hill might be, over the George Hill, so to speak. He might be, really about to fall off a cliff. Like, he's old. We get it. But this idea that it's some miracle or one of the biggest shocks on earth that he's playing pretty decent basketball to start the season is just it's just ridiculous to me. He said that he's feeling healthy, so yeah, he's been a pretty reliable contributor in his time with the Bucks outside of last year, where he looked like a shell of himself. So look, we don't always have to. There doesn't always have to be a villain tonight. I saw Grayson Allen was the villain. We don't have to hate our own, Frank.
Yeah, and honestly, like, this is why also just banking these wins is nice, because I mean, Jrue. If Jrue had this kind of, if Chris Middleton had the kind of game Jrue Holiday had tonight, with just
he'd be getting torched.
Five turnovers, 5 out of 18. And again, like Jrue's defensive floor is extremely high. So, there was no easy matchups for him tonight with both KD and Kyrie on the floor. So let's not act like, Jrue's was bad defensively, but not close to kind of the typical Jrue Holiday standards. So
it's a big hill to climb.
Yeah. So to be able to claw out a win when, essentially had two guys play well offensively between Giannis and Bobby, I'll gladly take that. This was not a work of art by any stretch offensively. It wasn't like, again, it's not like they missed a lot of open shots, but I also would say they had some really stagnant sets where, they were kind of like Jrue especially was getting spots where he's having to put up, really difficult shots. And when Giannis went to the bench in the fourth quarter, I remember thinking to myself, I think it was 90-83 when Giannis went to the bench, if I recall correctly. And I remember just thinking all right, we need Jrue to make one shot, make one shot during this period. And he hit one of his patented step back threes, which was very timely because, again, just the way he'd been shooting the ball, obviously had been pretty rough. So this was, like Philly offensively, it was a bit of a slog. Big difference tonight, obviously, is that you had Giannis being incredible to raise the floor of the overall offense pretty significantly. But you look at the numbers. We need to talk about opponent 3-point shooting every night, given that's been a recurring storyline. Pretty much nothing between these two teams as far as shooting luck goes. Bucks were 28% from three, 10 out of 36. The Nets were 7 out of 27, 26%. So, both teams shot really poorly. It's not like team was luckier than the other. Bucks also had 18 turnovers, so pretty sloppy there. But Bucks 14 offensive rebounds to the Nets 7. That obviously helps kind of erase some of that turnover, the turnover problems as far as giving you some extra possessions back. And again, you look at the Bucks in terms of the 3-point numbers. Last year, almost 41 opponent threes per game allowed. This year, I believe they're at 29 threes allowed per game. So through 3 games, this is the second time now in 3 games that they've allowed 27 or fewer, 24 on opening night. What would have been the lowest number of threes they allowed in the entirety of last season. And tonight, 27. I think the lowest 3-point attempt allowed numbered last year was 26, and tonight they only allowed 27. And I think we saw some of the trade-offs at times. When Kyrie had, I think, 11 straight points for the Nets, it was pretty much 2-on-2, and there was no help being sent, and it was pretty much just Kyrie's going to get a shot, and you hope he misses. But that's the flip side, right? We've talked about that in the past, how the downside of the help is that maybe you are giving the star players more of a chance to work 1-on-1 or 2-on-2 in pick and roll. And, by staying home, you are, again, putting guys on an island a little bit more and maybe exposing them. But again, the flip side is 7 out of 27, you'll take that opponent 3-point number any game. And ultimately, the only thing that really matters is, what the opponent does in terms of total points scored, and them to 99 is great. And I'll double check here. Obviously, it is very early going here in the season. But in terms of in terms of defensive rating, Bucks well ahead of the pack in terms of defensive rating. They're at 98.3 defensive rating. Cleveland second at 102. So it's too early to say that the Bucks are back to being the top defense in the league, or everything's perfect now, whatever. But Philly's got a lot of offensive weapons, and again, maybe you had some 3-point shooting luck for sure, but they were great defensively in game 1. They were really good defensively again in this tonight, and even against Houston, Houston made some threes, but I thought overall they defended pretty well, and they didn't allow 45 or 50 threes. They were still below 40 in that game too, even with some of the guys there that can just shoot off the dribble. So, just we're trying not to be greedy here early in the season with the team dealing with some injuries and things like that. So, I won't complain about pretty much any win. But in a game like this, even with the offense going through some tough patches, I think with this team, like the thing I think all wanted to see was, could they be a consistently great defense during the regular season, and especially trying to philosophically do it a little bit different way than they have in the past, to start to see some early season results. Obviously, there'll be stretches where the opponents shoot better from three and you have some bad luck in that regard. Those things tend to even out over the course of a long season, but very encouraging start to the year. And, even with some of the injuries and lack of depth on the wing. So, no complaints whatsoever. And now obviously the calendar gets a little more congested. So come away 3 games, 3 wins to start is big. And now you just hope that you can kind of continue to keep it rolling, especially at home where you've got very winnable games coming up.
You spoke about a stat that flashed up on the screen as you were watching the game. There was one for me, which had the Nets. Was nearing halftime, and they were 6 for 11 from 3. And I think this was after Royce O'Neal knocked down a couple. And I thought to myself, oh, the attempts is interesting. That's very low. The makes is a little bit unfortunate, though. If they're going to continue to hit 50%, the Bucks were going to find themselves in trouble because they couldn't hit one. We've referenced the numbers with Bobby, but just to really put it in perspective, at halftime, Bobby was 6 for 11 from the field with 16 points. The rest of the team was 11 for 38 with 27 points. And then from the 3-point line, Bobby was 3 for 6. The rest of the team was 1 for 16. So, yeah, he kept them afloat in the first half. They were down 12. Bobby had 16 at halftime. But just defensively, the big question for me, and we discussed it a little bit, if you're going to have those 3-point attempts so low, oddly enough, the Nets have been a team that haven't shot a lot of threes, historically, even last season, which is just strange. I know they didn't have Joe Harris for the team for most of the time. There was no Seth Curry tonight, and that'll bump up. They should probably just play Patty Mills, just play him the full 48 as well. But the question was, well, are you going to get more fouls on Brook Lopez? Are you going to have more fouls on Giannis? Are the points in the paint going to go right up? But they only had 42 tonight, and they were below 50% in the paint. And, Brook Lopez is just, as you pointed to at the start of the podcast, but he has just been an absolute monster to this point in time. 6 blocks again tonight. So it's nice having Brook Lopez in this lineup. The Knickerbockers up next Friday night, I believe. The Bucks are at home for a while here. So they got the Knicks on Friday nights. And look, we looked at this at the start. This time last week, we were discussing it. Okay, Philadelphia on the road. You got Brooklyn game 3. Maybe we were a little pessimistic, but with the guys out of the lineup, we certainly wouldn't have thrown out the possibility of the Bucks being 1 and 2. So, we'll take 3-0. And I know I jinxed this last time we were on the podcast, but the Blazers are down 15 through 3 quarters. So the Bucks might be the last remaining undefeated team in the National Basketball Association. We'll take it.
Yeah, that would be living the dream. Obviously, that's all we ever wanted to start the season, was to be the last team to be undefeated. I mean, I thought they were going to lose on opening night, right? So realist, sad sack, skeptic Frank, right? Was not holding
just a couple of grumpy old depressed men. We need to take a long hard look at ourselves. Believe in Giannis. Believe in Giannis.
Well, it wasn't a lack of belief in Giannis. Let's be honest there. It's not a Giannis question that ever was coming to play there. But I mean, I think just to reiterate too. I mean, you mentioned the George Hill stuff, but just happy for him. After kind of the way last season ended, and you mentioned some of the numbers: 8 points, 4 assists, 1 turnover, plus 12. Again, the plus minus king. And Javon Carter had some foul trouble. And probably the thing that annoyed me most about Javon Carter was he got it, like Giannis passed him the ball twice on fast breaks, and he's so small that if anybody's near him, he can't just go up and shoot a 3-foot shot. And so he had to pass out two potential Giannis assists, which was just kind of he's a very small person. And there was also a play in the first half where it was like a 50-50 ball, and the Nets player went to ground for it, and Javon just kind of didn't. And I was like, man, dude, come on, get on the floor. But anyway, I'm not going to question Javon's effort that I think is there night to night. But right now, yeah, I mean, he didn't even take a 3-pointer tonight. But like you said, we don't have to root for one or the other. You obviously hope both guys play well. They both had really good preseasons. Javon has just had, I think, a slower start to the regular season. But again, I mean, he's starting. That's not a particularly fair thing to expect him to, be starting games and giving you a ton. I think overall he started on Kyrie, and other than that run that Kyrie had, which a lot of that came against Jrue, in I think it was late third, early fourth. 27 points on 21 shots for Kyrie, 0 for 7 from 3, which probably maybe some luck there, but you can live with that, right? You can live with Kyrie going for 27, even KD going for 33, as long as you kind of contain the other guys. And other than that random spurt of Royce O'Neal going off from 3, he ended up 4 of 13 from the field, by the way, 12 points on 13 shots. So felt like he couldn't miss in the first half, and then by the second half, he airballed the 3. It was kind of looking more like a typical Royce O'Neal shooting night. But I was actually the guy that I was really happy to not see in the second half until garbage time. Edmund Sumner, he actually gave the Bucks some problems. He really kind of energized the Nets in the first half a bit, and ended up with 9 points in 6 minutes, which was kind of funny because it's he's been bouncing around. I think it was the Pacers before, so it was just kind of random to see him Sumner is he's on the Nets now, and he's actually doing stuff. I was like, okay. So, but yeah, bottom line, just keep banking those wins. Give Chris and Pat a little more time to rest up, and I think Eric tweeted a video of Chris at practice getting 3-pointers up. So hopefully he is continuing to feel better and make progress, and Pat as well with his muscle injury. But hopefully they can kind of continue to take advantage of the home schedule and keep banking wins and take the pressure off. Again, even if the Bucks are 0-3, I don't think Chris Middleton will be feeling pressure to come back. But always good to just be racking up these early season wins, especially given a team like Philadelphia. They lose tonight, they're now 1-4. Let's just say also not quite the same level of stability in Philadelphia as in Milwaukee. Definitely a lot more anxiety and chatter when the Sixers are struggling versus the Bucks. But thankfully, things keep on keeping on in Milwaukee.
The Bucks are banking wins, and we're banking podcast episodes, Frank. There's no doubt about that.
One other thing. Did you notice this at the beginning of the broadcast? Because I mean, you had the ESPN broadcast, right? I assume.
Yeah.
Yeah. Jeff Van Gundy in the first quarter. I forget what it was. Ben Simmons, I remember when he drove at Giannis, and Giannis stripped him, kind of blocked him in transition, and Jeff Van Gundy was like, "Well, I like that though. I like the aggression. It's what he needs to do." And then I think when Simmons, he had that putback and got whistled for the technical, and then Van Gundy I think was similar, saying but I like that. I like that. I like the aggression from him, and I'm just like, okay, Jeff, how much further is this enjoyment of non-productive aggression going to go? If Ben Simmons pushes over a server at half court, are you going to say you like that too? Why do we have to just baby Ben Simmons constantly? And I get it. He's been out a long time. There was the stuff last year, the mental health stuff. Look, I get it, but at some point it's the dude's playing really, really badly right now, and I don't know, right? I mean, I think I would assume it's a matter of time before he starts to improve. But on the flip side, part of me just sort of wonders, offensively, the lack of aggression and looking for his shot. He's on a team where he can get away with some of that, but it really is he looked at Draymond and was oh, people like Draymond, and he just doesn't really shoot. Okay, now I just won't use my athleticism and ability to score on the basket at all anymore. And he just looks pretty lost offensively at the moment, even though he continues to rack up some assist numbers. But really not great look for Ben Simmons right now. And Giannis and Simmons had some good possessions against Giannis too, right? Especially in the first half, we should point out. But by the fourth quarter, Giannis was giving him the the too small, like a very extended too small after Giannis finished in the paint. So yeah, I literally like. I mean, I'm a grade A Ben Simmons hater, and like I was almost like feeling bad for Ben Simmons at one point. So let's just, I guess we'll see kind of how it goes. I think he's got headroom to obviously improve as the season goes on, and the Nets need him to. But right now, showing graphics of the Nets' big three, including Ben Simmons, yeah, that's a bit of a stretch.
He doesn't look healthy. He doesn't look comfortable. He doesn't look confident, and he's playing like that at the moment. And if Jeff Van Gundy was doing anything, I think he was just sitting there and saying, how about we just say something even slightly positive about this man, because he's getting roasted left, right, and center. And you know me, and it's not just Ben Simmons, it's everyone. I don't feel totally comfortable with when the pile-on gets to this level, just on a human level. That's not, I don't really like that. So yeah, it's a little bizarre. But also any type of slight positivity, I'm fine with, because it's clearly a struggle right now. There's no doubt about that. It's not a struggle.
You told me you referred to Ben Simmons as a 2-and-D player on Australia on the radio the other day, right? So that was that a compliment?
Yeah, well, I can't call him a 3-and-D player, but he hasn't quite got the 2 at the moment. But I'm hoping that the 2 comes back. So,
he's also not a 1-and-D player, because he can't make free throws. So I don't know what number you put there. 0-and-D. It's pretty tough right now.
Well, if he doesn't have his athleticism, which it doesn't look like he has right now, he looks a bit sore at times. Then yeah, he's not going to be the same guy. So we'll see what happens over the next few months. But yeah, Twitter had another field day tonight with that performance. But you can also have a field day with a Locked On Sports Today podcast, not just basketball, anything else that's going on around the sporting world. Every sports show I turn on is still talking about Aaron Rodgers. They just cannot get enough of it at the moment. Maybe they'll talk about it on Locked On Sports Today. Who knows? But anyway, check it out after you're done with Locked On Bucks. We've still got one more podcast to go this week, but we'll make some executive decisions, whether we pod tomorrow, whether we do a post game on the weekend. Frank, we'll put our heads together and come up with a schedule for the next few days, because it actually does get a little bit busy. So the Bucks are undefeated. They're 3-0. They beat the Nets 110-99. Let's wrap it up. We'll speak to you guys next time we pod, probably tomorrow, huh? Maybe we should be more decisive, but we'll see you next time.